大家好 ，Welcome to our Lunch and Learn， 欢迎大家参加我们的午间中文。我是申展 ，My name is 申展廖 ，and I'm here with a few colleagues from our Confucius Institute at China Institute. My co-host 燕杰。
嗨，大家好，
你好，
你好，你好。
And two facilitators, 安迪。
嗨，大家好，我是安迪。
和李月。
大家好，我是李月。
Yeah, this Read-Aloud series of poems in Chinese are intended to welcome students of all language levels learning Chinese language and culture. While it might not cover many vocabularies and phrases useful for daily conversations, it does provide an opportunity to practice your Chinese pronunciation while learning culture, history, literature, and especially if you're interested in Chinese poetry. Hope you will enjoy today's session, where we will go back to the peak time when Chinese classical poetry throve, the glorious Tang Dynasty. I just want to take this moment to thank Mr. Ben Wang. He's not here, but he's a senior lecturer at China Institute teaching classical Chinese poetry for many years. Some of you here today may be his student. There's a course that he's teaching this summer, focusing on poetry related to women's life. This Lunch and Hour series is in part inspired by his classical Chinese poetry translation, as well as his teaching at China Institute. So I just want to pay my respect to him. And also, of course, if anybody who's interested in Chinese poetry, please check his class. It will give you so much more in depth than what this half an hour lunch and learn session would provide. If you, like me, are drawn to poems speaking directly to the heart with a direct and masterful way of using the language, in this case, Chinese. If you enjoy languages with beauty and ease that are emotional and somehow detached at the same time, while presenting imageries that connect to the nature and humanity vividly and philosophically, you would like Li Bai. And ideally, you have to learn Chinese. Li Bai has enjoyed a title of Shi Xian, celestial of poetry, as he wrote poems in such spirit, and they almost are felt not coming from this world. A few weeks ago, we have read Du Fu. Remember 春夜喜雨? Du Fu is considered as the sage of poetry, 诗圣. While sage is still in this world, Li Bai seems to possess or to be possessed by the kind of talent only celestials may have. Of course, these are all literary titles given to the most admired Chinese poets in its long history, and they in fact encountered each other. Du Fu was much younger than Li Bai. They met twice in 744 and 745 when Du Fu was at his early 30th. Li Bai was already having such a fame all over the country, and his celebrity glory left Du Fu much impression that he later wrote 12 poems to or about Li Bai. So that's to say, imagine this is the kind of impact of Li Bai on a poet later was called the sage of poetry in China. So that is as much as we have time to say about Li Bai. And just a reminder, because we have about 20 people in this session, if you are having some kind of background noise, well, you can mute yourself so that we can all enjoy the reading together. All right, let's go into the first poem. Some of you may have already learned this one because this is really a poem that's selected for school children in elementary grades in China. But this is also, as I mentioned, direct, beautiful image, and also speaking to the heart. So perhaps let's read this together first before we jump into today's new poem. And you can read after me. I will pause after each line. 静夜思，
静夜时，
床前明月光，
床前明月光。
明 just pay attention to the second tone here. 明
明
very good. 疑是地上霜，
疑是地上霜。
很好。举头望明月，
举头望明月。
Okay, just pay attention to this one. 举头，
举头
很好，很好。Last line. 低头思故乡，
低头思故乡。
Also this one.
思
低头
低头思故乡。思故乡。
很好。I want to remind or point out to our audience today, and perhaps we'll start with a question. Can you tell the form, the literary form of this poem? Is it a pentasyllabic or heptasyllabic?
我不知道。
We talked, for some old participants, well, we talked about this in one of our sessions about 杜甫. And then another question, is this a regulated verse, 律诗, or is this a quatrain, 绝句? Yeah, you can think about it. All right, so you probably have the answer. This is a pentasyllabic quatrain, meaning 4 lines. There are 4 lines for the poem and 5 characters in each line.
Oh, okay.
So in Chinese, it's 五言绝句, a pentasyllabic quatrain. That's right. All right, so after this poem, let's go into today's new poem for most of you, perhaps. So again, all the words with the underline in this title is actually either a name of a place or a name of a person. And the literary translation is highlighted underneath the word with the poetic translation underneath it. So just looking at the title, 黄鹤楼送孟浩然之广陵. I would imagine Du Fu would be so jealous of Meng Haoran, who's another famous poet at the time, because this poem was written by Li Bai for him. Du Fu wrote 12 poems about Li Bai, who in return wrote 0. But again, well, Meng Haoran was much older than Li Bai, so I hope that would provide some kind of comfort to Du Fu. I want to talk a little bit about 黄鹤楼, the Yellow Crane Pavilion. Crane is related to immortality, especially important in Taoist tradition. Immortals are often depicted riding a crane, a quite enviable commuting means, especially nowadays. And the Yellow Crane Pavilion, built first in 223, was in fact an important place, legend says, for Taoism, as one of its important figures became immortal here. Over the years, it was destroyed many times by fire, and the current one, the ones that we saw in the picture, was rebuilt in 1980s. And you probably have noticed that, well, the Read-Aloud is located in Wuhan. We all now know Wuhan for the pandemic. So here, we are just trying to share something other than the pandemic about Wuhan, which is in fact quite literary and romantic. There were many poems written for more than 1,000 years about this building. And the one we are reading today by Li Bai is nevertheless among the most famous in Chinese poetry history. All right, so I will read twice for each line and pause so that, well, you can maybe have some time to digest the literal translation and also the poetic translation. The translation I want to point out was by two writers. One is an American poet, and the other one is a Chinese scholar who were both at the University of Illinois when the Chinese scholar, Professor Wang, was a visiting scholar at the university. They worked on the translation together. So here we go.
故人
西辞黄鹤楼
故人
Okay, so I will read the line all together and then pause at the end. 故人西辞黄鹤楼
故人西辞黄鹤楼
很好。So I will read word by word and pause a little bit so that you can repeat after me. Here we go. 烟花三月
下扬州扬州
So second tone again. Pay attention. 扬州 Now the entire line. 烟花三月下扬州
烟花三月下扬州
很好 So here's a map. There are two locations mentioned. We have Wuhan, that's where the Read-Aloud is. And then now here is Yangzhou. Just want to show on the map of China where Wuhan is. It's in the middle of the country. And Yangzhou, this is Wuhan. And then Yangzhou is closer to Shanghai and hence the ocean. Yangzhou. And note that in China, most rivers are running from the west to the east to the ocean. So that's also when the boat is going along the direction of the river, it's 下. So it's going down the river. That's the reason the word, it's 烟花三月 下扬州 that indicates the direction of the water or the river. All right, the third line, again, word by word. 孤帆远影碧空尽孤帆远影碧空尽
孤帆远影碧空尽
很好。Last line. 唯见长江天际流 OK. 唯见长江天际流
唯见长江天际流
Just pay attention to this. 长江很好。So many great civilizations started near rivers. So this map shows the major rivers in China. Here, let me propose a question. Can you name the two major rivers in China? The two rivers that oftentimes when we talk about China, especially Chinese civilizations would mention these two rivers. Yangtze River. Yeah, Yangtze River. In Chinese, we call 黄河很好. So there is 黄河 in the north. 黄河. And in fact, when we are talking about Chinese civilization, especially Han civilization, well, we call this is the mother river. And Changjiang, in English, usually it's referred as Yangtze River. So Changjiang, 这是长江，这是黄河。Yeah. So as well, in the poem, a lot of the rivers are referred, a lot of the poems are referring to Changjiang, the Yangtze River. Note that this area in southern China, especially close to the ocean, well, is where the culture was especially thriving. So Yangzhou, as mentioned, well, in this poem, is one of the cultural center in the southeast of China. All right, that's the entire poem. Shall we read the poem all together one more time?
Sure.
Okay.
All right, so start from the top. 黄鹤楼纵孟浩然之广陵很好 OK 第一句故人西辞黄鹤楼
故人西辞黄鹤楼
烟花三月下扬州
烟花三月下扬州
孤帆远影碧空尽
孤帆远影碧空尽
唯见长江天际流。
唯见长江天际流。
很好。So, again, the form of this poem, is it pentasyllabic or heptasyllabic?
Pentasyllabic.
很好 heptasyllabic, because it has seven characters each line. Is it a quatrain or a regulated verse?
Regulated.
Well, it's a quatrain, 因为它只有4句 only 4 lines. A regulated verse has 8 lines in the poem.
So it's 4.
Yeah, it's 4.
Okay.
So it's a pentasyllabic quatrain. 七言绝句. All right. Well, this is the version without pinyin. The following recording is read aloud by our facilitator, Andy, reading the poem at a normal speed. Andy, please.
黄鹤楼送孟浩然之广陵，李白。故人西辞黄鹤楼，烟花3月下扬州。孤帆远影碧空尽，唯见长江天际流。
Thank you. Yep, that's all for today's recording. 谢谢。